This is the story of Richard Brashears, an Oklahoma freedman, a Choctaw freedman. Richard Brashears appeared in front of the Dawes Commission on October the 10th, 1898. Brashears appeared to only enroll himself and no other members of his family. He had proven that he had been a slave, enslaved by Canon Brown, a recognized Choctaw citizen. He lived in the community in the Sandboys County of the Choctaw Nation, in the northern part of the nation. Brashears' name was also found on an earlier roll, the 1896 roll, 2 years before he appeared before the Dawes Commission. At that time, he was 75 years of age. In addition, his name appears on a much earlier document from the Fort Smith, Arkansas criminal case files, where a letter indicating why he was actually arrested. Apparently, as it says in the letter, James Ladd and Richard Brashears, Negroes, did in the month of November 1869 send messages, circulars, and letters to individuals in the Indian country with intent to disturb the peace and tranquility of the United States, contrary to the 13th and 14th sections of the Act of July 30th, 1834, and I pray warrants will be issued for their arrest. This letter was signed by A.H. Cannon. But what exactly did the letters or the circulars or the flyers really say? Well, in addition to what they said, the act that they were actually violating was known sometimes as the Indian Intercourse Act or the Indian Trade and Intercourse Act of 1834, basically stating that if any citizen or other person residing within the United States or the territory should send, talk, speech, message, or letter to any Indian nation, tribe, chief, or individual with an intent to produce a contravention or infraction of any treaty or other law of the United States, or to disturb the peace and tranquility of the United States, he shall forfeit and pay the sum of $2,000. Section 14 of the same act has similar language indicating that the offender should forfeit and pay the sum of $1,000. In the file, when Brashears was on his way from the meeting in Scullyville, hoping to establish a meeting of freedmen, freed people to determine what their fate was going to be now that they were freed from bondage. On the way to that meeting, he was arrested and captured with a letter that he had actually composed along with his colleague James Ladd to Lemon Butler and Armstrong Academy. The offending letter stated, "Dear Sir, as you are aware, the colored people of the Choctaw and Chickasaw Nation must have a convention to take measures to obtain their rights as men and citizens of the nations and lay their grievances before Congress. We've agreed to meet at Armstrong Academy and hope that you will immediately send word to all the colored people of your section to meet there on the day named. Explain as much as possible the reason of the meeting and see that there will be a full attendance. Now is the time for action. If we do not work for ourselves, who will?" Signed, James Ladd, Richard Brashears, per V. Dell. In addition, a flyer was found among their papers, a flyer simply announcing a meeting or the very first convention of the colored people of the two nations, Choctaw and Chickasaw nations, hoping to establish this meeting in December of 1869. This was 3 years after the Treaty of 1866 abolishing slavery had been signed. Eventually, the men were actually released from their arrest, and they were proven to have not violated any law of the United States. At that time, Richard Brashears was then free to go. The meeting, however, that was to have occurred at Armstrong Academy never unfolded. He continued to be an activist for freedmen and was considered a leading man and testified during the Dawes era between 1898 and 1914. He was eventually placed on card number 1179, and his roll number was 3821. His name was finally placed on the final roll of citizens and freedmen and placed as a name on the Choctaw Freedmen roll. And eventually he did receive his land allotment. He was enrolled, and he did leave his legacy among the people of freedmen of the Choctaw Nation. May he never be forgotten.